Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Good place to be.
All right, y'all. There it is. There it is. How's everybody doing today? All right? Awesome. Some familiar faces from the Accelerator AMA we did a little bit earlier. Appreciate you sticking around. This is one of my personal favorite events that we do here at Capital Factory. Founder stories. If you listen to how we built this or anything of the sort, you know, it's just asking questions about their story and their company and their exit and how they built it. So it's a fun little Austin twist that we do here. I've been to probably every single one so far and learned at least something from it. So I implore you to come with an open mind and learn a little bit today. When I do this earlier, there's usually numbers associated with these cities. And I ask the question what they mean. And it's the largest population in the US by city. So Dallas would be 4, Houston would be 4, Dallas would be 9, Austin would be 11, and San Antonio would be 7. And these are the largest cities by population. Now the significance of that is that all these cities are in driving distance of each other. All these cities are becoming startup hubs, and they're really great opportunities to start a business and being the business-friendly state that Texas is. And with that, each city has its own competitive advantage as well. Dallas having 50 of the Fortune 500 companies up there that could become partners, that could become customers of yours as a startup. There's also a lot of real estate money, oil money, and family offices that we're trying to get to know and educate on investing in startups so that we can introduce them to our portfolio companies. These can become investors of our portfolio companies. They can be investors in our fund, and they can just start understanding the startup landscape and promoting startups in their cities. Same thing with Houston, a lot of oil, real estate money, family offices that are traditionally investing in those two areas, but how do we introduce them into investing into startups? Second generation are taking over these family offices, and they don't necessarily want to invest in oil rigs and in real estate. They want to do something a little bit more exciting, and we want to help educate them on this side of things. So there's also a lot of deep tech, a lot of energy tech in Houston, a lot of fintech up in Dallas. Austin's kind of this hodgepodge of startups here. This is why we're all here. It's one of the larger hubs here in the US, and San Antonio as well is growing pretty rapidly thanks to the help of Geekdom down there, which is the emblem over the city. Cybersecurity, they have a large military footprint down in the area, so we're excited about what's going on down there too. This is just something I want to touch upon quickly. It's been a pretty big milestone, I guess, for lack of a better word, for us. We've had Defense Innovation Unit here. We've had AFWorks, which is the Air Force Innovation Arm. These are agencies that are looking to work with startups and want to expedite the process of working with these defense agencies. And it's not normally what you think of when you think defense. We have a company in our portfolio right now that is working with them to make sure that the military is staying still in their fitness and ready to just staying healthy, basically, is the idea. And that company's called Fit Ranking. So, you know, it's not always generally what you think. It's the whole spectrum of startups that they can be working with. Cybersecurity is a big deal. AI is a big deal. AR/VR is a big deal. So these are the different areas. And we opened up the 8th floor this February because of the Army Futures Command coming here to Austin. More specifically, the Army Applications Lab. A lot of 3-letter acronyms, if you're hearing me correctly. AAL works out of the 8th floor. And nowhere in the U.S. are these 3 agencies under one roof, and more agencies are coming. And we want to put them in touch with startups because this can be a great way for non-dilutive funding for our startups. So how can we continue to make those introductions? Like I mentioned, they work out of the 8th floor. Booz Allen works out of the 8th floor. That's a government contractor. You could be grabbing coffee and bump into somebody there and build a relationship. And Booz Allen could bring you in as a sub onto one of their contracts with the government, or you might be able to fit into one of the contracts that the Army Futures Command is looking for. So the idea is that it's just this open area where you can bump into the right individuals at the right time to help take your business going forward. And a lot of what they're doing is, like I mentioned, non-dilutive funding, which is always a good sign and perks up a lot of ears whenever whether it's an incubator, whether it's an accelerator, whether it's a co-working space. It's a super helpful way to get plugged in. And like I mentioned, each of these events end with a happy hour, much like today, where you can network with individuals, like-minded individuals, other people who've started companies, and just kind of see where the doors open from there. Also, how to become a mentor or investor, if that's something that you're interested in and qualify for, we'd love to have that conversation and invite you to one of these events. And then the third Tuesday, we have an Intro to Defense Innovation AMA, which is hosted by our venture partner, Kevin Lancher. And then also, we generally do a road trip to either Dallas, Houston, or San Antonio. These are a ton of fun. It's a whole day. It's a long day, I won't lie, but it's fun there and back, where you just go up for programming, epic office hours, meet with mentors, meet with investors, and really kind of just chat about what you're working on and network throughout the day. And then we're up and back all in one day. So Dallas, probably the furthest city, generally back around 11, but it's a great day. Non-stop networking. The trick is that we put everybody on a bus for 3 hours or 2 hours or an hour, and you really just have to talk to whoever's next to you. So if you're comfortable with that, I highly recommend it. And you're on the bus with mentors, you're on the bus with investors, you're on the bus with other startups. It's generally a pretty good place to be meeting with people and networking. And then the fourth Tuesday, Founder Stories. Like I mentioned, one of my favorite events that we do. Always learning something from it. And with that, I'd like to invite up Areej and Chris. Areej is our venture principal here at Capital Factory. She'll be moderating this with Chris. Learn a little bit about his background. He has been an entrepreneur here at Capital Factory before, with Links Laboratory, which was an accelerator company and an investment by Capital Factory. And then also, I see SAMHSA and Level. Is it Level?
Level.
Level is the new company. And that's his new company that's also an accelerator and also an investment. So with that, I invite both of them up and kind of lead the discussion, allow everybody to learn a little bit. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for coming.
No worries.
All right, hello everybody. Thanks for coming. It's Pride Month, yay! So Chris and I are proud members of the community, so we're happy to be hosting everyone today. Chris, I'm excited to actually host you because I've never heard your personal founder story, even though I run the venture funds. I probably should. So I've got a few.
You invested in us.
Yeah, right. It was before my time though, so I feel a little better about it. But I've got some templated questions here, but let's just take it and kind of run with it a little bit. So Links Laboratories is the spotlight of the discussion today, and then we'll also touch on Level a little bit at the end. First question I have is, was Links your first startup?
Yes.
Okay, and how was it started?
So I was a student at the University of Texas in the graduate program under this professor named Professor Shriram Vishwanath, and I was doing research on computer vision. And I, like everyone else my age, I grew up kind of like a fan of like Steve Jobs and like entrepreneurship as a concept, but I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to just like be a scientist. And so like you always hear this like phrase of like technology looking for a problem, which is like very common sort of trope in entrepreneurship. But we were just like technology looking for nothing, which is what research is, basic research. So the way we got involved in entrepreneurship was Josh Baer, who runs Capital Factory, runs a student program called Longhorn Startup Camp at the University of Texas. And some undergraduates and I, we put our research project through Longhorn Startup Camp. And basically what the technology was basically what it was, do you guys know what the Microsoft Connect is?
Mm-hmm.
You do? Does anybody not know what the Connect is? No. So it wasn't very successful, which is why you might not have heard of it. But do you know what Face ID is? Yeah, so Face ID is like this 3D camera inside of an iPhone that points at your face, and it uses the contours of your face to like identify who you are. The sensor inside Face ID originally was invented and put inside the Microsoft Kinect, which is an Xbox accessory that would track your whole body. So the research we were doing was using sensors like that to reconstruct rooms. So you'd have like a mobile device with a sensor like that, and you would go and scan like 3D space. And so Josh wanted us to try to commercialize it, and we went through Longhorn Startup Camp and identified that like maybe architects would want to use it, maybe special effects people would want to use it, and that's how we founded Lynx Laboratories, which I think was your original question. But 4 years after that, it was worth like $100 million. So it went from like useless, like didn't even want to be an entrepreneur, and took this like very loopy path to become valuable.
That's awesome. So there's like a million questions that come out of that, but let me first ask, did it originally start as a hardware product and then pivot into software, or was it always hardware?
So I think, so the product that we had as Lynx Laboratories, like the main thing, there were two things that we sold. The first camera we built was this thing called Lynx A, and it was this giant metal box that we built on university property that had a 3D camera in it and a laptop screen, and then like joypad controllers. And you would carry around this giant box and like scan spaces with it. That was the Lynx A. And then the Lynx B was a tablet like screwed to a camera. So it was like way smaller. It was maybe, I don't know, this big or so. We were always doing hardware, but we never made the hardware really. I guess with the Lynx A, we sort of made the hardware. We'd take a laptop apart, we'd put it in a metal box, we'd stick a camera inside, and then we'd like screw it back together. And then with the Lynx B, we would buy the camera and buy the tablet and just stick them together. But we always thought of ourselves as a software company. Like what we focused on was writing the software that would like scan spaces and like track devices and things.
Cool, okay. And so the co-founders that you had, were they all undergraduates? Were
Yeah.
you guys all in school? Okay, what was the biggest challenge when starting this as young entrepreneurs?
I mean, we just didn't know what the heck we were doing. Like, we all came out of research. We had no idea what entrepreneurship was. We had no idea what a customer was, because the customers in research are like people that evaluate your papers. So like, it's not just that we didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. We were like the least qualified and like interested in knowing anything about entrepreneurship as well, like genuinely. And like also we were just kind of like, I wouldn't say snobbish, but just like what's like not snobbish but means you're like ignorant and also unwilling to learn. That's like what we were. So like we were going through all these great classes where they were like teaching you about like listening to customers and like interviewing and like, you know, finding out what people would want from a product, and we would just like ignore it and keep building cool tech. So we made like we made a lot. I mean, basically like any mistake we could have made, we made along the way.
When was the inflection point where you were like, oh shit, this actually does work?
I mean, I think there were like two inflection points, because what ended up happening was we kept improving the technology, and then we got acquired for like $11 million by this company called Occipital, and that was like the first inflection point because they saw the value of the technology, even though we were only doing like couple $100,000 of revenue a year. Then the second inflection point was when we took that technology and like started closing multi-million-dollar deals to like apply it in commercial products.
And you did that after the acquisition with Occipital?
Yeah.
Is when you started really?
Yeah.
Cool. And how large was the team when you did get acquired?
6 people.
6 people?
Yeah.
All undergrads?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Okay, so let's talk about the team dynamic real quick, because I'm really interested in this.
Okay.
There's 6 undergrad students. All of you are techies, or was there a mix between?
Okay, so I was a graduate student. We had
Okay.
4 undergrads, and then Courtney, who's actually in the room right now, was our like head of operations, like office manager.
Hi, Courtney.
So just to clarify that.
Cool.
So what were I guess at that point, you know, some people on the team were graduated from being undergrads.
Okay.
But your question was, what was the dynamics?
Yeah, what was the team dynamics for such a young team like that?
Just like constant incompetence. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like we just really had no idea what we were doing, and like we all got along fine, but we were always like, I mean, we were just in this constant state of pivoting. Are you guys familiar with like the term pivoting? so we were just in this constant state of pivoting, and like the one thing that we always had in common is we really liked the technology. But I think it was just like a lot of like long days and long nights, like trying to scrape together like revenue and get the tech working. But I mean, generally, like we all got along fine, and like the thing we all had in common was being like super nerds.
Yeah.
So like we just kept getting excited about the tech.
Okay, that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
How did the acquisition come about? What was the road to being acquired?
So Occipital was like sort of a competitor to us that just did like a way better job because like they cared about things like customers and marketing, and so like we got to a point like we had customers, and our customers were like people that worked in like orthotics and prosthetics and architecture and special effects, like very like niche-y. And what they did is they built like a very small hardware device that you could attach to an iPad and went direct to consumer. So we did a Kickstarter and they did a Kickstarter and it was 10 times bigger. Like we were making revenue, but they were making revenue and it was like 10 times more. And in fact, when we merged the two companies, it was like 1-9 merger. So it was like basically like we merged like directly proportional to like how successful the two firms were. What was the question? How did it happen?
How did it come about?
Yeah, so when we did our second generation of our products, which was a tablet plus hardware attached to it, we used their hardware sensor. So I knew their CEO pretty well because we were probably like the best performing software company that was using their hardware module. Like we were one of the only companies that had like real revenue, but there were like maybe 80 businesses that were trying to do like software for 3D cameras. And the CEO and I like didn't get along at all. Like we would get on like pretty much ever, even when I worked for him. Now we get along great. But we would just get on phone and like just argue nonstop, and like then he would like call me back the next day and be like, "I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have talked to you that way." And I was like, "Don't worry about it." But I was like mad. But he knew the company really well, and he was always really respectful of the tech. So there were two companies that were like looking at investing in our Series A, Google and Bosch, which is like an automotive manufacturer. And we had this round pretty much pulled together. Like we were about to raise like a $3 million Series A. When they're diligencing the round, they wanted to talk to some people that knew the company. So I asked them to do I had a list of references, and one of them was the CEO of Occipital, because we were commercial partners. So he basically found out that we were about to be like well-funded and flew out to Austin, and we showed him a prototype of our 3D sensor, which was gonna compete with us. And he just like bought us basically in like a cash and stock offer.
How long did the negotiations take?
Too fucking long. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was terrible. Like it was the biggest deal they'd ever done, and they were gonna spend like 30% of the cash they had in the bank. And then at the same time, Intel was investing $15 million into their company. So, and like also like none of us had done a merger before. Like we hadn't, they hadn't. The angriest people were the lawyers, because they were just like, we've never seen one this incompetent. Y'all can't decide on anything. Like, you know, like you literally will agree on nothing. Like we ended up, the legal costs, it was like an $11 million deal, and the legal costs across both sides was like $420,000. And my buddy Miles just sold a company for $17 million like 2 weeks ago, and his legal costs were $54,000. So like, we just like, it was just like, just terrible incompetence, right? It took, I think we signed a letter of intent to get it done in 30 days, and it took, I want to say like maybe 130 days to get it done. Yeah. And it came all the way down to the wire too. And I remember they wanted to do a simultaneous sign and close, which means that like the deal wouldn't be effective unless all of the people on our side and all the people on their side signed in the same day. Because normally what you do is you like agree, the principals agree, then you send the paperwork out to all the parties, because you'll never be able to get, you know, all the VCs, whatever, to sign it in time. But they wanted to do a simultaneous sign and close. So, and Delaware, which means that we had to file our like merger certificate with Delaware by like 7 p.m. local time. And and it was very complicated. Like one of our board members was like basically like terminally ill at the time. So like we had to get his signature, and like that was like really complicated and like not a good experience for like him. And then we were driving around Austin to get 17 different investors' signatures on paperwork between Thursday and Friday. And then Friday, it was coming down to the wire. It was like 6:15 p.m. And if it didn't get filed with Delaware by 7 p.m., then the whole thing would have been like reversed. And there was like, and their lawyer kept interrupting. We were on a conference call, and I literally told the lawyer to shut up, which was like rude, but we were just like super distracted. And then we had this like assembly line where one of our teammates, Hopper, was like filling out paperwork like for the signature, then handing it to Courtney, who was like checking it, who handed it to me, and I would sign it, and then we'd hand it to this other person who was like scanning it. And I think we got all the paperwork done at like 6:45 p.m. And I think if we took 15 minutes longer, I don't even know if a deal could have gotten done. It was just like, I don't know. It was very stressful.
It's very stressful.
Yeah.
You're stressing me out just talking about it. That's crazy. So I'm going to open it up to the floor in a second here. This was a good overview of just the journey, and then we'll tap into more details as we go, but I want you guys to help me do that. But my last question before I move and open it up to the audience is, what made you sell? That's the biggest question I always have for entrepreneurs. Is like, what led you to say yes? Why did you sell out? To put it frankly.
I mean, we didn't have our backs like completely against the wall, because the alternative would have been to raise another funding round. But the main reason is we didn't have like product market fit, and we knew that the investors that were coming in were like investing in the technology because they thought we would get product market fit. And so I basically, it's like a sort of risk-based decision, right? Like, how likely are we to get product market fit versus just like do this team up? And how likely would we be to get it together? And as it happens, so like you don't know at the time, you have to make a risk-based decision. As it happens, after the merger, the technology we were developing at Lynx led to the biggest business line at Occipital. And the Lynx team like drove that effort and closed the deals. So if we had stayed independent, like we could have done much better, I think, because Occipital's revenue went flat for like a year and a half, but their corporate valuation went up by like 100 million or their core business revenue went flat. The business we built went like that, and their valuation went up by like 100 million based on that work. So you might say like, oh, it was like you sold too soon and you should have held out and tried to build that business yourself. But you actually don't know, because the combined efforts of the teams, like I closed the deals and managed the teams and our engineers built it, but it still wouldn't have been possible without their marketing, which opened doors with customers, and their reputation, which like led customers to do contracts with us like earlier than the tech was actually working. So from that perspective, like I feel like I'm 30 now, we had an okay exit, like then we built a bigger business together, and I still own a portion of that combined business. And most importantly, I got the experience of like working with a much bigger team. And so I think like the sort of best context to think about like, did something happen too soon is like, well, how would you evaluate what happened after, right? And I don't think you can do that objectively, but I'm like very happy with the outcome, if that makes sense. I like the people I work with. I like that we accomplished it together. The deal structure was such where like we got paid out and they still gave us more upside. So like I'm still riding, Occipital's success. And then the CEO and chairman of Occipital call me like once a month to talk. So like, it's kind of like, and I'm way more into what I'm doing now. So I think like I don't know if we sold too soon, but I'm happy with how it went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's an awesome turnout. I mean, it's upside for both parties.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and open up to questions with the audience, and I'll help steer it along the way. But if you guys want to help me out, let's kind of prod Chris a little bit in different areas. Go ahead.
I'll throw the first one out there. First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
On an exit. You mentioned when you first got started, you didn't have sales, didn't have marketing, et cetera, but then you mentioned later on that you did have customers. How did you get those first customers if you had no sales, no marketing?
Well, the first thing we did was launch a Kickstarter, and that was like a kind of a market test, like who bought it and why did they buy it. And so we identified the segments that customers bought off the Kickstarter, and then we just tried to sell to those segments.
Okay. But were some of those like enterprise customers?
Yeah, we ended up making most of our money off enterprise. So when Occipital bought us, we were making most of our money off industrial inspection companies. So they would take the equipment and they would use it to take measurements inside of buildings. And then after the merger, we made most of our money by far off licensing the tech into VR headsets. So all the VR companies, they wanted to get rid of these laser-based stations and put cameras inside the headsets, which you've now seen with like the Oculus Quest. Everyone but Oculus was using our tech. So like HTC, Tencent, Samsung, that's what ended up being like the most valuable market by far.
Whenever you're putting together the initial customer contracts for these large enterprise customers, what was the biggest lesson learned in that process?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'll break it down. So like 2/3 of our customers were in Asia when we started doing like consumer electronics, because these VR headsets get manufactured in like Shenzhen, China, Taiwan. So most of our customers was negotiating with like Chinese or Taiwanese individuals. And then we also had customers in the United States. I mean, they're really complicated contracts because they would have a non-recurring engineering segment, which means that the customer is expected to pay us to do like custom work, for example, like redesigning our sensors to fit in their headsets. And then they would have a licensing component. So like as they manufactured the headsets, they would need to pay us, you know, a couple bucks per unit. And they're really complicated contracts. And there's people at those companies whose like full-time job is to just make your life like difficult. I think in the United States, it goes pretty fast. Like people in the United States are like more aggressive and like very, they're more actionably aggressive. Like they're like tougher on negotiating terms, but you can reach a reasonable agreement because there's like just a lot of pattern recognition with how it plays out. The Chinese are like more internationalized, like they do business more worldwide. Like we do a lot of business like Americans to Americans, and we do a lot of business like Americans to China, but the Chinese do business with everyone. And then they also like, they're culturally very different. Like the Chinese are like collectivists, so they're like really excited about national identity and they're really excited about their like companies. Whereas Americans are like more individualistic, so it's like more ego that you're dealing with. It's like that individual person, what they're trying to accomplish with their career goals, just in broad strokes. The Chinese, like their negotiating style is like absurd. They, like their opening position is just like ridiculous. Like, and this happened like pretty uniformly when we would negotiate with them. Like we would be selling them tech, and their opening position would be something like, you sell us sensors, but you pay us to take them. Which is like absurd. Like, why would we do that? And we'd be like, why would we do that? And they'd be like, because it's our brand, and then you're gonna get more customers. And we were like, no. And then we would whittle them down from there until like the contract was just like totally unfavorable to them. Like we'd sign contracts where there were like project milestones and payment milestones, but they weren't tied to each other. So like we'd just get paid, like if we were like missing targets on the project schedule, and they were like fine with it. It was like, it was very like bureaucratic, and as long as they like asked for everything and then went through the process, like they would end up with nothing. And then Americans, it was like more, I don't know, it was like, it didn't take as long and it was like more balanced, right? I mean, this is tech licensing, it's not like enterprise solution sales, but I think the big stuff to learn there is like IP rights across like core intellectual properties, like software and hardware, patents, like binary code delivery, and then also like brand and publicity rights. Those are like really important things to nail down, because as the licensor, you want to put all your customers on your website. So, you know, when you get the big guys, all the little guys will adopt you too. And then they want to get as much of your IP as possible. So that's like really the stuff to watch. I think the number one lesson is like the tougher you are, like the more they'll pay. So like we just like wouldn't give up ground. Like before we had the tech built, we made every customer that worked with us pay $1.5 to $2.5 million for an integration contract because it was like a hot market, and like none of them liked that. But what ended up happening was like the price was so high that it would get escalated up to like the highest levels of the company, and then you would get to people that you could like actually deal with. And so I think like basically like sticking to your guns and like being aggressive is like sometimes gets it done like faster than like trying to play ball and then like, you know, make concessions for customers.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. Any audience
What
questions?
about like the negotiation to sell with Occipital? What would you rely on for guidance on how to navigate that process?
So we had two board members, Larry Walker and John Stockton, and John was like worked with me very closely. Like we would go meet at his house on the weekends and like look over the latest like merger terms and stuff. We had a really good attorney, Wilson Cincini, Josh Holloman at Wilson Cincini. He's now at Cooley. Yeah, I think though honestly, at the end of the day, like the relationship between the two CEOs is like really important because like you can't like there's just no part of the contract that can get like delegated really, like unless you just have like an airtight letter of intent, which I think is like I've been involved in a bunch of mergers since then, and like just getting it all worked out in the letter of intent stage when it's like not papered yet on all the substantial terms makes it like way faster. Because the full contract is basically like the letter of intent plus like weird lawyer babble. And so like when you're mixing like lawyer babble and disagreements over language with like actual business disagreements, I think that's where it gets like super bogged down.
So in terms of, you know, it sounds like you had a board that was really in a position to help you kind of at every like step in the journey. How did you build that out? When did you seek them? How did you start building that? What were you looking for?
Well, I think for like a board of directors, well, they're both investors in the company, and then I just asked them to join the board because I wanted them to be more hands-on, and they were like super helpful. And I think I'll just mention two other boards that I think are like, I think boards in just general are helpful. A lot of people do like customer and community boards now. Like so before you even get a product out, you'll get like a group of like representative customers and like ask them what they want you to build, for example. So we did, at Occipital, we had like a representative group of customers that were like senior executives in the VR space. And we would meet with them not as in a board setting, but like across them individually to gather requirements like weekly in all these separate meetings. And then at Level, we did the same thing, but we got 17 different representative end users. I think getting groups of people that like have better segment expertise or more business experience like in your company is like really helpful. There were like extensive periods of time while we were running Links where like John was really running it, and I was just like his like marionette, you know, just like I'd be like there were even some times where I was like negotiating, and then I would be like, hey, can you hold on for a second? I'd switch lines to John and be like, they said we're not worth that much, you know. What do I say back? And so like having those people that have like been there and done that is very helpful.
How did you scout for your board members, or how did you, I guess, bring them on as investors in the first place?
I mean, I just think networking is like really, 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 really important. Like if you think, like, you guys know what like graphs are, like mathematical graphs, not like this type of graph, but like with nodes and links between them, like the internet, right? Like the way that Google search results work is when you search for a text word, so like let's say Apple, they go and scour the entire internet and they look for hyperlinks, that like blue underlined text. And any hyperlink that includes the word Apple, it looks at what website it points to, and then it ranks those websites by the number of hyperlinks that point to them. It's like that simple. That's PageRank. And so the websites at the top of the Google results that are the most relevant are the most linked to. They have the most connections to other websites on the internet. And so when you search Apple, like you get the Apple Wikipedia page and you get like Apple Computer. Because when other people want to reference the word Apple, that's what they refer to. And so that like those top results are like considered like highly connected. And I think like working your way to highly connected like individuals is like super, super, super important. And you can do that within like a domain that's relevant. You can do that with investors, and you can do that with like people that give you advice. And it really follows like a power law. Are you guys familiar with like a power law?
You want to explain it?
Sure. So the idea of a power law is like most of the power is concentrated in like very few. So for example, like if you look at advertising revenue on the internet, like 45% of it's made by Google, and then the next 35% is made by Facebook, and then there's this like ad network that represents like 18%. Well, there's Twitter and Snapchat, and then this ad network, and then other than that, it's like there's only 6% left, right? So like it tends to concentrate like this, where like very few control a lot of it. And so I think networking your way, I think working hard to network your way to the right people is like vitally, vitally important in business. So like, for example, like I just think it's the #1 job of a CEO, frankly. So like at Level, I spent, we haven't talked about what Level is, but it's not like relevant to this point. Like I spent 9 months recruiting this advisor, and we're in the middle of a fundraising round right now. I spent 9 months recruiting this advisor, like cultivating this relationship with him. He's like an expert in our space, like he's like internationally recognized, has the most Twitter followers or whatever. Then he made an intro on Friday to this guy in town who was like one of the founders of Trilogy. So he's like just this like Austin-based like billionaire guy. And then I had a meeting with him on Monday, and then he introduced me on Tuesday to the like top VC in town. And then like that top VC is having us out to meet their partners on Friday. So like that shows like the like, and like how much credit should I get for that? Literally zero. Like I just followed the like relay, you know, through these like networks, and I think it's just like so vitally important. Like I think if there's like one thing you should do in your business, it's like basically like find people that are like more experts, have more money, you know, like basically find all the people that have more access, more money, or more ideas than you do, and like just glom them together, like just be glue.
Love it. All right, any other questions?
What is Level?
Okay, so what Level is Amazon for like money itself. So Amazon started as this like vertically integrated bookseller, and they basically took like Barnes & Noble and Borders, they took that experience online. And so you could go to Amazon.com and you could pick from like this selection of books, and they would come and get like delivered to your door, and then eventually it all got unified under like Amazon Prime, right? And before Amazon, you had all these different like vertically integrated online sellers, diapers.com, you know, pets.com. Basically, there were 200 different websites for the 200 different things that you would buy, and consumers would have to sign up, get an account, put their card information in, change their address, and then over time, Amazon offered this one unified, trusted experience across all the things you would want to do when you shop. And what we're doing is offering one unified experience across all the things you do with money. So what we're launching with is like this app, and it has a checking account inside of it, so like a full FDIC insured checking account, and then it has crypto wallets, and then it has 0 fee transactions between them. So like you basically get Coinbase for free, so Coinbase charges 2 to 10%. You can switch from your cash into your crypto and your crypto into cash for 0% on Level. And then you get a full banking account. So for perspective, if you make 5 trades a month on Coinbase, that's $15. And then to move your money from Coinbase to Wells Fargo costs $25. And then Wells Fargo, if you can't keep $1,500 in your bank account every day for a month, they charge you $15 a month. So we're combining all those services into one single app that has a checking account, crypto accounts, and like frictionless exchange. And we're offering it for $9 a month. So the idea is that this is sort of everything you would want your primary financial institution to be, over the next couple of years, under the business model of Spotify, and getting rid of like all the hidden transaction fees and sneaky fees. And that's our beachhead. Like that's the product that we have built right now. And we have like quite a few customers like playing with it. But over time, like Amazon offered all these different services and they got rid of like the diapers.com and all these fragmented experiences. We want to bring all that into the app. So from your homepage, you'll be able to go, you'll have checking account, which shows how much cash you have, stocks, it shows how much total value of stocks you own, and then crypto. And so you would click on crypto and you've got all the coins you can buy and you just buy them if you want to. Stocks, instead of having like an E-Trade account and a Betterment account, you would have your list of stocks you own at the top and then your automated strategies below that. So what's really cool about the product is from the homepage, you're 2 clicks away from any financial product that you would want to use. So if I want to have a robo-advised account to like have a diversified set of stocks, I click on stocks and then I click on my robo account. If I want to have an index of crypto, which is something other people don't offer yet, but we do, I click on crypto and then I click on index and I'm inside my index account. So we want to give people like the freedom to navigate finance in like this frictionless experience with 0 transaction fees, so like no more sneaky stuff, and a business model they can trust, which is like $9 flat. Yeah.
That's great. So here's a question for you, which might be too difficult, but so what's my question? What's the biggest lesson you've learned from your first company that's rolled over into this company? And there might be more than one, but.
I mean, the problem with Lynx is like we had technology, but we didn't pick like a scalable market. So my #1 goal with this company was to like pick the most scalable market. I was like, we picked a company that literally had no customers or like market, right? And then we just like there's no one on earth that wanted to buy our shit. And so then what we did is we just stayed alive. Like at one point the government put $1 million into the company to like fund it so that we could continue our research. And we just did anything we could to stay alive until like we got lucky enough for a market to exist. So that was the #1 thing is I wanted to go into something that has like a real market, and there's no market bigger than all the money in the world. So that was the first lesson we carried over. And then the second lesson was like what finally got Lynx to work was finding one vertical market that was big enough, VR headsets, and then just focusing on that. So like once we got our first customer, we got the next 4 customers, and then once those worked, we got the next 10, but like selling all of them exactly the same thing. So the second thing we applied is we just wanted to build one product, like just one product that could service everyone. And I think those are like probably the 2 most important lessons. Like, it's very like stressful. It's like very taxing on your like mind and body to like try to make a company succeed that is like literally destined for failure, right? And so like you should just pick something that you know is like big enough, because like then you'll know what went wrong if like it fails.
I like it. Who here is an actual founder? Like an active founder, okay? And an aspiring entrepreneur? Okay, cool. There's actually a wide breadth of age in this room, but I was gonna ask, so Lynx was in your 20s is when you built it and you grew it and you made it successful, and then you moved on to level late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Has age ever been a hindering factor in any of the discussions you've had, whether it's customers, investors, board members?
I mean, I feel like my age has come up in conversation as like a trailing indicator, but the leading indicator was I was saying something really stupid. And so so if somebody's like, hey, you should listen to this investor, they've been doing this a long time and they're older than you, like what they're really saying is like, shut up. Like, what are you talking about, you know? I don't think age has been a factor, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, are there any more questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Yeah, go
I
for
mean,
it.
maybe, I don't know how much of this you can even talk about, but how big is Level at this point? And
Good
like,
question.
where are you in that product market fit discovery?
So Level is like, it's kind of in like partial stealth mode. Like you can't get on the product unless you know somebody that's on the product. So like you have to be invited on. And we did that because the way we're gonna grow it later is through like viral referral program. So we'll pay people on the platform when they recruit their friends. So if you're familiar with those programs, there's this coefficient called K, which is like your viral coefficient. And it's basically like the number of users referred by each user. And you want that to be greater than 1 because then it just like grows forever, right? And so we have this word of mouth campaign. We don't do any marketing. We just got a seeded set of users and then we try to make them happy until they referred people. And they have referred now 2,100 users. So that's quite a few for like where we're at. We've got 90 or so users that have like funded their accounts. So it's pretty well indicated. What we're working on right now is getting bonded to offer the checking accounts because that makes it a way more attractive product. Like most people when they're buying Bitcoin for the first time, like don't have Ethereum to buy it with. They have like debit cards and, you know, cash. And so that's like a big product market fit inflection point. But the business basically works now. Like it's growing virally. And so we're looking at like what is gonna take it to the next level. And so one of them is introducing market orders, which grows our, market orders are just like the easier way to trade. That's what consumers do. That grows, there's 20 times more people that use market orders than use limit orders in the world. So that grows our market by a factor of 20. And so if we apply that to our current user base, that would be like 40,000 people. And then we're also gonna do fiat trading. And fiat is trading fiat to crypto, fiat to cash. Fiat to crypto is 20 times more popular than crypto to crypto. And so that grows it by another factor of 20. So I don't think they explicitly compound, but you know, something like, you know, that now you're like sort of in the millions of like, of users. And then to get it to grow, we're paying, when you refer a customer, we pay you $1 to $2 per month forever. And so for like some people on our platform, there's one guy who's referred 450 people.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be making $1,000 a month when we activate that. But this new influencer that signed up, he referred 40,000 people to his last platform. So he would make on our platform like something like $800,000 a year. So it's like a really attractive financial incentive for people to spread it through word of mouth. So it's like growing well right now, but there's like, we're gonna be introducing new features that make it just like target a way bigger market, 400 times bigger market. And then B, we're gonna be paying people to recruit customers. And so, you know, if they've recruited 2,200 because they like the product, they'll probably recruit a lot more to get paid for it.
Can I add more?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
What about on like the regulatory side of all of that with, I mean, you threw out a checking account, that sounds like banking, which sounds really laborious.
Yeah, it's like super like hard and like scary and
So
like,
are you having to comply with all of that, or are you working with an existing bank on that piece?
we're working with an existing bank and we have to comply with all that. So
And then is it the same on the trading, like the non-crypto, but the equities and whatnot?
we're not doing equities yet, but yeah, I mean we'll do equities like late next year in North America. So that's not like anytime soon. I think Robinhood's like really hard to compete with because everybody thinks they're free. So you need to like build, they're not free. Does anybody know how Robinhood makes money?
No.
Data,
Trading data.
sort of.
They take your money and they trade it, right?
So,
They don't hold it. They don't hold the stock for you.
okay, so,
How do they make money?
alright, so, okay, so yeah, they make money the ways that both you guys said. they sell data, and they keep the interest on your securities and cash.
Shit.
But that's only how they make a small fraction of their money. The next thing they do is they match your orders into Wall Street high frequency trading firms, and those high frequency trading firms give them kickbacks. And they don't give them kickbacks because of their like nice little Wall Street hearts. They do it because they're like getting good prices on the orders. And then Robinhood just became a clearing broker. So somebody's gonna be buying Apple stock for 101, and then somebody's gonna be selling it for 99, and Robinhood's gonna keep the split. So first they called themselves, when they introduced their banking account, they called it a banking account. And then now they call it a cash account because LOL regulators. And then when they introduced Robinhood, they called it a free trading service, but for the reasons I just described, now it's called a commission-free trading service because LOL regulators. So I just think they're like, we compete with them, so of course we're snarky, but like, and they've done an awesome job with like product, marketing, like they're very respectable, but like, I just think calling Robinhood is like if you called Facebook like ad block. Like, it's just like so, like, they're literally stealing money from poor people. Like, it's just like the exact opposite of what you'd expect, right? Anyways, it's hard to compete with Robinhood because like they have a customer acquisition first model, and there needs to be a lot of customer education for people to realize that they're like losing money on every trade. So we're gonna start in crypto and checking because it just pays for itself in minutes. And then we'll have to educate people to move into equities. But one advantage is that we have a transparent business model. So like we'll be sort of the DuckDuckGo to their Google. But what's better than that is is just the fact that you get it all in one app. You know, that you can have one app with one simple business model where you can keep all your stuff.
Cool. Jamie?
How do you plan on educating people on equities? That's like I majored in accounting. So I know, but not everybody does.
Well, I mean, like 40% of the U.S. population like trades equities like semi-actively. So a lot of people are familiar with them like enough, and way less than people than that like trade options. So we're talking about like just straight up stocks. I think there's not a lot of education required. You have to educate on the business model, and then what we tend to think about at Level, like we're really obsessed with just like simplifying the product experience because it looks like before Amazon, right? So on Amazon, even though their like user interface looks like horrific, you know, like I think like Walmart is like Amazon with like a storefront. Or it's like Walmart is like a box store with Amazon's inventory, and like Amazon is like, you know, Walmart's inventory with like a user interface also designed by the Walmart staff. It's just like the UX is really good, but it literally looks like GeoCities, right? All they care about is like how do we get people to buy. The main thing is you've got a search bar at the top and you just type in anything, you can buy it, right? So we focus a lot on that at Level. Like you're 2 clicks away from like any financial strategy. I forgot what your original question was.
I mean, the reason I ask is because I think it's super important, like educating people on financial like literacy, basically. Like, how do you like? It sounds like educating people on equities is going to be part of the mission. So
yeah. So I mean, so what's interesting is there's like this arbitrage between. This is like kind of a complicated answer, but I'm just gonna use like the correct jargon because like if you're interested in it, you can Google it and it's like interesting. But what happens in finance is like there's advanced versions of products, and the advanced versions of products tend to have low fees. So if you're like rich, you can sit directly in a Vanguard index fund, or you can go trade on E-Trade, and as long as you keep all your minimums, like your rates are really low. So basically like rich people get a good deal in finance. And so like just to pick one example, like Coinbase Pro has a standard trading fee of 0.3%, right? Then there's usually like a watered down consumer version. And the consumer version always has the high fees. So Coinbase Consumer is exactly Coinbase Pro, open to and available to exactly the same users, right? Except half the features are gone, which consumers kind of like because it's easier. And then Coinbase consumers' fees start at 2%, so they start at 6 times higher than Pro, and then as your trades get lower, and guess who places small trades just like regular people, right? They start implementing minimum fees. So if you place a $50 trade, the fees go from 2% to 6%. If you place a $10 trade, the fees are 12%. So that kind of gives away that you're not paying extra because they've put all this investment into making like a beautiful consumer interface, right? What they're exploiting is called information asymmetry. So if you're like educated, you're gonna go select another product because you know that you're getting like gouged on fees. And if you're not educated, you start on Coinbase Consumer. And that's like the main thing that we don't like in finance, because it reminds me of like bullying, right? Like, yo, consumer, like come to my birthday party, it's gonna be really fun, and then my friends are gonna beat you up, right? That's the world of finance. It's like invite people to this like really fun ice skating trip, and then like beat them up. And so like literally the word level comes from like leveling the playing field. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus a lot of energy on simplifying the consumer experience. So for example, like we go further than Coinbase Consumer. We have automated trading, we have indexes for consumers. So like you don't even have to pick crypto anymore. You can just put money into an account and it'll automatically buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, all based on market prices. That's easier for consumers. But then our fees aren't 2 to 10%. Excuse me, our fees are 0%. So we're basically giving, like, just as another example, there's a strategy called automated market making, which is like how these like Wall Street guys make a ton of money, where they basically just buy low, sell high all day long. And they do it fast enough to be like the first offer when someone places a market order. So if the price is like 100, they'll just go and they'll offer to sell high frequency at like 100 and a penny, right? And so they're just collecting all these pennies all day long. And what we did is we made a passive account that consumers can sign up for and just put Bitcoin in, and it applies that strategy. So the user interface is, it just looks like another crypto. You've got Bitcoin, Ethereum, and market making. And you can deposit into it from any of your accounts, and then you turn it on, and it does this like really advanced Wall Street thing that like has only been advanced to like offered to like really advanced people. But it brings it to the consumer level, and it charges 0% on every fee. So that's not specific to equities, but like we'll do similar stuff there.
Cool.
So like you want to have a minimum to get your Betterment account, you'll get a robo-advisor account for free.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's super important. I love that part.
Cool. I know we're running short on time, so let me ask one last question, and then we can go and eat food, and I think there's booze in there too. So we definitely encourage you guys to do that. My last question is more of a plug, but how has Capital Factory most helped you in your journey across both companies?
I mean, Capital Factory, my relationship with Josh has been like really good. I mean, first of all, like he convinced me to do entrepreneurship. So like that's a start.
It's kind of the reason for
So like Capital Factory, my life path, you know, like so that's like a high bit, I guess. They've been super loyal, like they invested in like both businesses I was in. Josh and Gordon like roll up their sleeves like anytime we need anything. The workspace is really good. We recruited like most of our staff using the Capital Factory network. And I think like I think it's really important to like keep an open mind and like listen to people that like know and have been there, and there's just a lot of people like that here. And the most useful like set of resources I would say is the mentors and the entrepreneurs in residence. Like everyone's always shy about using those resources. And it's kind of intimidating because there'll be like CEOs of publicly traded companies come in. But if you think about it, like, you know, we all come out as like babies, right? We don't know anything. Like Steve Jobs, somebody was changing his like diaper at some point. And so like you're gonna encounter a marketing problem in your business, and like the first thing you should do is go sign up for like 4 mentor sessions with marketing mentors, right? Because all of them have had 20 plus years like working on marketing problems. And you can just be like, here's the 5 things I'm worried about, and they'll just tell you what to do, right? So there's just literally there's like a list of people rotating every week that will just run your company for you, that have been like running their companies more successfully than you can run yours. And I think that's like freakishly valuable. So I like highly recommend tapping the mentor network. That's like the biggest thing. I think making use of the mentors is like 85% of the value, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this, it's not really hidden, but it's kind of like a hidden like gem in all of the resources that we throw at the community.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's great. So I don't know if Jamie mentioned this at the beginning, I can't remember, but so that's okay. So we heard Chris's story. I think you're gonna stick around for happy hour, right?
Yeah.
Cool, so he's gonna stick around for happy hour. We also have 3 other individuals in the room that I'd like to point out. Jamie was the one that did the presentation to start this off. He's a venture associate here in Austin. We've got Jill right here, and Nick in the back. I'm gonna raise your hand. And they are 2 newest venture associates in Austin. And they are here to answer any of your dying questions and talk to you about getting involved in Capital Factory as needed. And I will stick around for a little bit. I manage the venture funds. They are definitely more qualified to answer questions about the accelerator, the community, the member network, and the mentor network as well. So I will leave it at that. And we can go into the kitchen and eat lots of food.
What food is there?
I don't know. That's a
Okay.
good question. Let's go find out.
Oh,
so easy.
It's so easy.
You're right in what you say, that I'm relied on so much around here that they don't want to try it, they don't want to learn.
No one does.
They just call me.
I think the reason that I started learning more was because I stopped trying to call you immediately, and I'd be like, yeah, I need help, and then I try and help, and then like if I couldn't, then I would put you up and be like, hey.
You know who's notorious for that shit?
Who's
Alex
Alex?
Casas on 8th floor.
She what?
She's notorious for being like, come fix it, it won't work. And then I'm like, did you turn it off and on? And she's like, no. And then I'm like, well, try that. And then she does it. She's like, okay, fixed. It's like, damn it, woman.
Yeah, dude, just
I love her to death.
a lot of people do that though. It's just kind of, I think it's more of the whole thing of people just don't even, they don't care to try.
Yeah.
What?
We're talking about the tailgate, and my friend was like, we're talking about making a flyer, and he goes, we saw the vinyl, and I saw the flyers from last year. I was like, yeah, but I'm gonna freshen it up and change it up a bit. And he goes, trying to add a hot stripper silhouette, and I was like, I'm gonna put Knox in a G-string and put it on there. And he goes, they will sell it.
Oh my god.
I'll sell it. Be your pimp. Pimp you out with Sancho's.
I think I'm going to make a plate of tacos for myself so I can eat it tomorrow.
You're gonna wait, what?
Make a plate of tacos for myself so I can eat tomorrow for lunch.
Oh.
You know? It's not a good idea. No, not a good idea.
It's always a good idea. Oh shit, the live stream's still on.